A historic milestone. That's the declaration from the US Middle East envoy after the Syrian government and Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces agreed a comprehensive ceasefire deal. The agreement will see a phased integration of SDF fighters and institutions into the Syrian state. The SDF says it also includes the withdrawal of government forces from the front lines and the entry of security forces affiliated with the Interior Ministry into the city centres of Kurdish-majority Hasaka and Qamishli. Now, this is what the US envoy to Syria, Tom Barrack, has posted on X. He says, today's announcement of the comprehensive agreement between the Syrian government and the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, represents a profound and historic milestone in Syria's journey towards national reconciliation, unity and enduring stability. This carefully negotiated step, building on earlier frameworks and recent efforts to de-escalate tensions, reflects a shared commitment to inclusion, mutual respect and the collective dignity of all Syrian communities. Zein Basravi is joining us live now from the Syrian city of Aleppo. So just talk us through what's been announced, Zein.
Well, it's been a couple of hours and we're beginning to see details, and crucially, let's get right into what the Syrian government and the SDF are getting out of this deal. The Syrian government issuing a statement on state TV saying that it will take control. The Syrian state assumes control of all civil and government institutions, crossings and entry points, and no part of the country remains outside of its authority. This is something that Damascus had been pushing for with the SDF for some time, that it needs to be the centralized government authority governing Syria from the capital, Damascus, with no talk of autonomy, with no talk of separatism, with no talk of autonomous regions that are operating independently of the centralized government in Damascus. That seems to be the expectation, and crucially, both sides, the SDF and the Syrian government, have issued statements that do say the same thing. So there does appear to be an agreement. The quiet of the last 72 hours with no confrontations between the two sides clearly used to carry out conversations that have resulted in what many are seeing here as a positive result. If both sides manage to keep their guns silent, this will be remembered historically as the beginning of a turning point. The SDF also is getting what it wanted. Brigades made up of Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces fighters, of its own fighters. 3 brigades in Hasaka and one more brigade specifically dedicated to including the forces that are currently in Kobani, which had become the last major potential flashpoint of this episode of violence. So these brigades represent a level of military presence that will act as a deterrence in the minds of the SDF to maintain the rights that it has said it has fought for so long. So both sides getting some of what they wanted, but both sides moving forward in unison.
The Syrian government says this is going to be happening immediately. In reality, what does that mean?
Well, practically on the ground, what we're likely to see is that massive military buildup by the Syrian army in several areas, redeployments as the SDF withdrew from places that it held. We're likely to see a scaling down of that. We're likely to see the SDF pull out of villages around Kobani that it was shelling and firing drones on and hitting regularly in the past week. We're likely to see that sort of wither away. Institutionally, what we are likely to see is more civilian administration stepping in to really pave the way forward for the country, for these communities that have been divided for so long, to move forward in one. We've already started seeing that in Aleppo. If you'll remember, just a few weeks ago, this is the city where the latest episode of violence really began, with the siege of neighborhoods like Sheikh Maksoud. And we were there not too long ago, where we witnessed the SDF effectively being granted amnesty by the government. Here's our report.
Elements of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces gather once again, waiting to be called up. But this time, it is not to fight. They are here to pledge for peace. In this Kurdish neighborhood in Aleppo, hundreds of men and women have surrendered weapons and are returning to civilian life.
We're at a healthcare center in the heart of Sheikh Maksoud, being used to register soldiers and police that fought against the government. Now, it is strictly voluntary, and in exchange for registering themselves, the government is offering amnesty and issuing new IDs. Just weeks ago, this neighborhood was the scene of running battles. Now it is the blueprint for what the government says reconciliation nationwide could look like.
At so-called reconciliation centers, representatives of Syria's Interior Ministry call names, conduct security screenings, take fingerprints, and photographs. Once the process is complete, former fighters are issued a piece of paper clearing their names.
People affiliated with the SDF organization are coming in, so we settle their situation and register them to have a temporary ID document. We receive hundreds of people per day. People need to feel safe, and we are giving them the papers that protect them.
While showing up here is voluntary, this document is something they will be required to have as former fighters, to resume a normal life, apply for an ID, and move around the country. Realizing Kurdish rights that Syrian President Ahmad al-Shara has promised may take time. But here, now, Ministry of Interior officials say what they are doing is giving people a clean slate, and hope it means a fresh start for everyone. Abir was an SDF police officer but says she's looking forward to returning to civilian life. She says she wants to go back to her job as a seamstress at a textile factory.
We need peace. I urge people who didn't reconcile to come. It's easy. We need to live together peacefully. I trust this process. Before, I refused to come, but then I changed my mind when I saw all the people registering. I hope Kurds and Arabs live in a unified community.
Men that would have otherwise been facing off with Syrian forces, dropping their guard and giving their names. This is something more than demobilizing an armed group. This is trust building at street level. The new government trusts them to come forward. They trust the government to protect their rights. Syrian Kurds we met seemed relieved, perhaps by the prospect of not living on the margins of society, instead signing up for a new Syria that Damascus has promised will be for every Syrian. Zein, Basravi, Al Jazeera, Sheikh, Maksoud, Aleppo, northern Syria.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.